Okay, Linda, so go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Linda Johnston, and I am a faculty member at the University of Toronto and a member of CASN's Research and Scholarship Committee. And I'm very happy to welcome all of you to this Lunch and Learn presented by CASN's Research and Scholarship Committee. The presentations in this series focus on nursing workforce. Lunch and Learns are a popular tool in academia to encourage scholarship. Faculty members come together during their lunch hour to share their work and to network. CASN's webinar series, presented by the Research and Scholarship Committee, aims to recreate the collegial feel of the Lunch and Learn, and it is intended to serve as inspiration and a networking opportunity. Nursing faculty from across the country present on a scholarship project and discuss methodologies, successes, challenges that they have encountered in their work. We are recording today's session and will begin with a presentation from our speakers and conclude with 15 to 20 minutes of question and answer after the presentation. To submit a question, please use the chat function. In this session, we will hear from Dr. Hussam Eddine Ben Ahmed, a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Ottawa, Dr. Kathleen Leslie, an assistant professor at Athabasca University, and Dr. Ivy Lynn Bourgeau, professor at the University of Ottawa. You can read their bios and the description of their presentation on the Lunch and Learn CASN webpage. Their presentation is entitled Nursing Workforce Training and Research, the Critical Role of the Nursing Faculty Workforce. Thank you very much to the panel for presenting today, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Linda, for that introduction and for the opportunity to present to CASN to you. On the next slide, we've included our Indigenous affirmation, and it is, as it is customary, we start with land acknowledgement in the spirit of reconciliation, acknowledging that there are still colonial legacies that impact us to this day. I personally am situated in Ottawa, or Ottawa, the traditional unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, and to whom I pay respect for the ability to live, work, and play on this land. So on our next slide is just a bit of an overview of how this is going to go today. So the first section will go to Hussam, who will talk about the unique challenges facing the nursing faculty workforce. I'm going to provide some evidence and solutions to tackle these challenges. And then Kate will walk us through some of the opportunities for nurse-led health workforce research. So Hussam, I will pass it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ivy. So the first question, I'm going to respond to the question, what unique challenges face the nursing faculty workforce? First of all, I want to begin with a quote from Hunt that resumes the importance of the critical role of the nursing faculty in nursing education and to our society. Being a nurse educator is a rewarding, demanding, and time-consuming role. So what do we mean by that? We mean that nursing faculty, when they enter the academia, they have some responsibilities and duties. First of all, they need to teach the nursing and train the nursing student to be nurses in the future. So they have different responsibilities and activities, such as developing and revising course syllabi, selecting some materials to educate their students, developing or revising plans. And also, as a result, as technology evolves, the role of nursing faculty educator or nursing faculty is become more and more complex. So they need to be familiar with the technology to include in their teaching methods and strategies. They should also participate in professional role development and also act as role models for their students to become competent and caring future nurses. Also, nursing faculty should participate in doing research and scholarship. They need to have like funds to conduct the research, and especially the research part, we're going to talk later with Dr. Leslie. She will talk about the research area. Also, nursing faculty should participate in national and international conferences to present their scholarly works, as well as participate in publishing and writing and publishing articles and books. But it's not enough, because nursing faculty should also participate in and outside the institutions to give some services, such as being on school nursing committee, on board or advisory committee, and also they can serve in international boards. Also, nursing faculty can or should participate in mentoring a new faculty, and these services are unpaid and voluntary, just to advance their schools. So, well, we can resume that the nursing faculty, as you can see, they have a lot of responsibility and roles. And when we talk about roles here, we mean like clinical instructor, adjunct professor, assistant professor, full professor. So there is a lot of teaching roles in nursing education. And what's the most important to take into consideration, that the roles of nursing may be in academia or in clinical settings. And both settings have unique characteristics and requirements. So to sum up, nursing faculty have a complex role and responsibilities in different areas, such as teaching, service, and scholarship. And also they need to be cognizant of several requirements, the nature requirements, etc. The nurse faculty shortage was not a theoretical construct, but rather a lived experience. So what do we mean by that? We mean that nursing faculty workforce is a critical issue, because as you can see in Canada or in other countries around the world, nursing faculty workforce is living looming shortages. And this coincides with the crisis that we live now in Canada and other countries about the growing demand for registered nurse. We can see that stakeholders, unions, and other key stakeholders, they have focused a lot on nursing workforce shortages, and there's less attention to the nursing faculty workforce. So this, someone can ask, if we don't have enough nurses or nursing faculty, who can train the nursing students, who can train the graduate nursing students, and to facilitate their integration into the workforce? So we can see that from the literature that nursing faculty workforce shortage is more challenging than nursing workforce shortages. And we can ask as well, what are the contributing factors to these shortages? So we have reviewed the literature, the international and national literature, and we have found some important factors that we're going to shed a light on today. The first one is pending retirements and unfilled vacancies. So according to the Canadian Association of Schools of Nursing report, there is 81 permanent registered nurse faculty retired in 2020. And among this, 8.6% permanent registered nurse faculty were under 60 years old, and 99% of permanent registered nurse faculty aged 60 years old or more were eligible for retirement. So the picture that we can conclude from this report, that nursing faculty workforce is an aging workforce. And what's the impact of that? The impact that when nurse retires, we will have less nursing. In fact, the number will be fewer. So the impact is like nursing schools were enabled to fill 40 full-time nursing faculty positions, which represent a 1.6% of vacancy rate. The second factor that we have identified is a heavy workload. So many nursing faculty have raised this issue, that have a lot of responsibilities, and we have, as we have described at the beginning, that there is a lot of responsibilities and a role that nurses should fulfill in their when they enter the academia. And many of them, they are suffering from heavy workloads that have negative consequences on them, which was exacerbated by the faculty shortages. So having increased workload may contribute to work-life imbalance, job dissatisfaction, and preventing many of faculty from fulfilling their task of scholarship and leading others to retire within the next 10 years. The third factor that we have identified is inadequate financial compensation. So here we talk about the preceptor or the clinical instructor, that they have raised that their salary is poor and low, they have lower salary comparing to clinical and private sector's positions. And the problem that when they don't have a good salary, so we're going to have a challenge to attract the future nurses who want to be educator, and to retain the nursing that they work in the academic position. The fourth factor, according to the literature, is the lack of support for nursing faculty. So the lack of support here is a form of time, giving them time and resources, especially for mid-career nursing faculty. If they want to do research, they don't have time to do that since they have a lot of responsibilities to do. And for the novice, and the second point that we raised from the literature, the novice faculty, even in a graduate program, they don't have a course how to prepare them to be educators. And this have negative impacts. And concretely, they feel more stressed, overwhelmed, and burnout when they cannot conciliate between all these activities, and may lead many of them to have a lack of integration and limiting faculty's productivity. The fifth factor that we have identified in this project, that nursing faculty incivility and poor workplace culture is a problem that have been raised since decades in the literature. Until now, this problem have not been resolved yet. So even though we have some charts that have been placed in some schools, they still have this faculty incivility. And here incivility, like between faculty and faculty, between faculty and students, or even between faculty and deans. And many of them have reported that they are feeling bullying, experience of bullying, discrimination, violence, and other forms of dehumanizing and hegemonic practices. So this may lead to unhealthy and toxic relationships when they don't feel comfortable in their institution. The consequence of this may lead faculty to feel stressed, overwhelmed, threatened, intimidated, and leading many of them to quit their position and even the profession altogether. The last and the sixth factor that we have identified is the lack of diversity within the nursing faculty workforce. So we know, like in Canada and even in other high-income countries, the population that we serve is diverse. We have many people from indigenous people, racialized people, LGBT, etc. So we need to have a diverse faculty and nursing faculty within our workforce. And some research have highlighted that the physical appearance and speech patterns are two barriers in hiring nursing faculty from minority groups. And this also have been raised by other research in the international level. As you know, that nursing profession is a feminine profession, so we don't have enough like men in the nursing workforce. So this is underrepresented within the nursing faculty workforce, which can have a negative impact on the nursing workforce that we serve, the population that we serve. So the lack of diversity may lead many faculty, especially novice faculties, to feel isolated, maybe rejected, and also have some difficulties to adapt to the majority of culture within their institution. So now it's your turn. I'm going to invite the audience to respond to the question, according to your experiences, according to your work, which of these factors do you think has the most impact on nursing faculty at your institution or at your experience? So here you have the poll. Just please fulfill the poll, and then we're gonna like see your responses. Thank you so much. And please
I have launched the poll there. It should come up on everyone's screen. I'm not sure about those on mobile devices. I don't know how that would come up, but we can just give another 20 seconds or so for answers. It's just an informal, casual poll here to get a temperature here on what everyone thinks about this. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. And also feel free to add in the chat other challenges that if we didn't shine the light on. So feel free to add that in the chat.
Okay, it looks like most people have voted here, so I'll just end this one, and I think the results will pop up for everyone. You won't see who voted for what, but it'll just pop up with the results here.
Okay, so here we have the results. I think that the most factor that have been voted by the participants is the heavy nursing faculty workloads. as 67%. And after we have like the inadequate financial compensation, then the lack of mentorship. After that, pending returns and full and unfilled vacancies, faculty and civility as 26%, and lack of diversity as 19%. Thank you so much all for this first. Yeah, so some people that just added some other factor. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to move to Dr. Ivy Limburgo to present you what are the solutions to tackle these challenges.
Thank you so much, Hussam, and thank you everybody for your input into some of the challenges that are being experienced. You know, what's very interesting is that there's a lot of attention to the nursing workforce, and rightly so, but the nursing faculty workforce is part of that broader workforce and needs to be included in any policy decisions to impact the broader nursing workforce. However, what we have found in the literature, other than the articles that Hussam has walked us through, there's little attention to this nursing faculty, and there are far fewer initiatives that have been studied or implemented to address the nursing faculty workforce challenges. So we really need to have a coordinated set of both reactive and proactive strategic and long-term solutions. The nursing faculty workforce needs to be part of the overarching nursing workforce. So we're going to go through some plans, some leading practices that have emerged from the literature. And we take this largely with sort of a bit of a career course approach. So that's why we're starting first with offering fully funded PhD programs in nursing. If you want nurses to become faculty, you need to fund that. And you need to create and facilitate that pathway for nursing faculty. So full funding here is defined as a financial package for full-time students that includes tuition remission, as well as an annual stipend or salary. And this needs to be comparable to salaries for a practicing nurse at their stage. So this is going to be different than typical PhD student funding, which in and of itself is also inadequate. So that could be raised as well, but that's a different presentation. But so this is our first solution. On the next page, we also want to have embed into any institutional expansion for nursing faculty that they embed an equity, diversity, and inclusion plan across a variety of different factors. So across different gender identities, different ethnic racial backgrounds, Indigenous identity, abilities. So this is really, starting to work in partnership with longstanding and newly formed Indigenous and Black nursing organizations, and to develop a plan that may guide the employers, that is universities and colleges, in their decisions regarding recruitment and particular targeting of communities with appropriate recruitment language, but also building into these plans retention strategies. And this also includes facilitating the process from immigration to licensure recognition to employment of internationally educated nurses who may want to work in faculty positions. So IENs are not only a source for the nursing frontline workforce, they can also be an important source for faculty positions. So our next slide talks about offering attractive financial incentives to both attract and retain nursing faculty, especially when there's disparities in terms of what your salaries will be in practice. So there needs to be attention to wages and benefits to attract new candidates, to train other nurses. And research has shown that this improves positive outcomes. And it also rewards faculty for their experiences. And that is quite undervalued, particularly in nursing, but valuing experience. So sometimes people, come onto the scale as if they're like a brand new PhD student and they have many years of experience. That needs to be recognized. And then another really interesting leading practice is to create secondments with employers. Like this has happened in some states where the employers top up the salary in order for there to be a balance between what practicing nurses and what a nurse faculty is, so that there isn't that negative financial implication from moving into faculty positions. And employers have seen that that's important for building the nursing workforce long term. On the next slide is really about supporting nursing faculty throughout their career progress. So offering formal mentorship programs. And again, you may be very experienced as a frontline clinical nurse, but you're less experienced with, all of the different processes to meet, teaching, research, and service requirements. And it's to support and facilitate their transition into an academic setting. There's good research to show that mentorship programs are highly effective, but it all depends on both the quality of the mentor and mentee and how you support that relationship. So you shouldn't just assume someone who has more experience has the skills, for mentoring. So it's important that both faculty feel that they are supported in that role. If we could just move back one more, Hussam, I was still on there. Great. And also, evidence shows that mentorship programs really do not just enhance people's progress through the ranks, but their sense of identity, that this is part of an enabling environment, and it ensures their retention, and also enhances their productivity. All right, next slide, thanks. Enabling more flexible scheduling and work-life balance. So this is important because we need to acknowledge that the nursing faculty workforce are disproportionately those who identify as women. We need to acknowledge that in our society, that caring, informal care work at home, childcare, elder care, etc., is still largely disproportionately borne by women partners. And so we need to acknowledge that. While we try to change it, we need to acknowledge where that is. And so gender really does matter here. And so to help balance and redress these heavy workloads, which you all identified as being critically important, we need to better delineate workload requirements and to have an approach that's not necessarily equal, but equitable. Equitable for stage and equitable for the entire life that people have. So allowing novice nursing faculty to have some flexible scheduling, to have some semesters off, so where they can have concentrated periods of time to apply for research grants, to stabilize them and establish themselves in their field. And also, supports around teaching and mentorship in that regard. And again, this will help facilitate retention and progress through the ranks. Another one is we do a lot of research on magnet-like hospitals, and I think that we can apply a magnet-like accreditation for nursing schools. And this is really to humanize the environments, because nursing socialization comes from somewhere, and that comes from the colleges and university training programs that nurses are socialized in. If that is not a civil environment, then that breeds incivility out in practice. So we need to start at the root. So fostering civility to improve faculty well-being, but also satisfaction, retention, progress through the ranks, and productivity. And so everybody needs to be involved with that, but there is a particularly important role for those in leadership positions, those who are, program directors, school directors, deans, whatever the leadership positions are, to really become empowered and trained in sort of mental health awareness, to create those enabling environments for research, teaching, and service work. And again, there's extensive evidence that shows that magnet-like hospitals are really great, and we need to create magnet-like universities, colleges, education and training programs. All right, and then towards the end of the career, we need to create effective succession plans. If I hear one more time about somebody retiring without there being a very clear pathway, to someone to take over some of their tasks, to build on that incredible experience and institutionalized knowledge that they have, it's so frustrating to see that. And so that's in faculty, but that's also out in the frontline workforce. So this is preventing a loss of experience and institutional memory and etc. So that should not be happening. So this is a really important initiative. So again, universities and colleges should initiate discussions early on. Sometimes people feel that this is an awkward conversation, perhaps, but it's a crucial conversation. And let's just get on with it. And so that there is a sense of providing that type of support, and there's a win-win between the mentor and the mentee. So again, evidence shows that this is a really viable strategy that we need to implement. I think our next slide is just to get you to vote on what you think are some of the most promising of the approaches that we put forward. So magically, while I'm speaking, a poll has arisen. So if you'd like to take a few moments to vote, and also if you have any comments that you'd like to add in the chat, we always like to hear if there's something else that we should consider and something else that we're missing. Again, we can only report what's in the literature, and that means people have actually studied this issue, which is why the next topic that Kate is going to be leading is so critically important, because we really want to encourage everybody to take on health workforce, nursing workforce as a domain of their research. So I think we have the polls coming in, offer more flexibility in teaching assignments. That's looking like that's quite high with 66%, so 2/3 of you say that. Offer full funding packages for nursing PhD programs. That is quite high. That is excellent to see. That's really good for us to see. Succession planning, I think, is about the same with formal mentorship programs. So mentorship being important for different parts of the career. And so again, some recognition of the importance of bonuses and financial incentives, civil environments through magnet-like accreditation, and equity, diversity, inclusion plans also figure quite highly. So thank you so much, and I'm going to pass over to Kate now.
Great, thanks so much. Ivy, I think there is just these slides here. Okay, we'll come back to those, or do you want me to move along with this one?
Sorry, my apologies. There were a couple of other things that I needed to address. So Hussein and I have been working on a report where we tried to take sort of a stepwise plan. And as I mentioned at the outset, to include nursing faculty as part of the nursing workforce, we need to include them in any type of planning that is happening. So we need to embed nursing faculty workforce planning and forecasting. We need to enhance the data that we have about the nursing faculty and include that into planning. And then we need to enable all of the different decision makers, including those in universities and colleges, to make allocations, and then for the deans and school directors to be able to utilize those data to make a case vis-a-vis the university or college of the need for more nursing faculty. So access to evidence-based decision support. So that's just part and parcel with what we are proposing for nursing workforce planning and decision support more generally. Yes, and there's another slide, I believe. And so identifying who could take on those initiatives, and we're really trying to target our strategic priority actions to particular actors. In this case, I know that CASN has supported our a collective approach or a collective call to the federal government to establish a health workforce agency, of which nursing faculty workforce planning would be embedded. The provincial territorial governments to initiate ongoing nursing faculty planning as part of nursing workforce planning, and then nursing universities and colleges to embed planning for nursing faculty utilization through such things as human resource information systems. So each of these actors can be part of the nursing workforce and nursing faculty workforce plan. Okay, so with that, let's hear more about nursing workforce research.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ivy. I'm going to pivot here to talk a little bit about those opportunities for nurse-led health workforce research, how this is a growing area where there is a need to build more capacity, and how nurses can take a leading role in that. And here I'm going to highlight some of the current projects that we're working on at the Canadian Health Workforce Network, and I'll bring in some of my own experiences as an early career nursing faculty member building a program of research in this field. So nursing workforce research is critically needed. Hussam and Ivy already discussed the specific challenges that are facing nursing faculty members and how that's a microcosm of the larger crisis facing nursing workforce in Canada and globally. I don't really need to tell this audience about that. But here is a quote from Gail Thelma-Murphy and many others' report on investing in the nursing workforce post-pandemic. And we know this to be true, that nurses often don't feel very valued. And one small way that we can combat this is to ensure that nurses have a very strong voice in health workforce research. And that can contribute to strong nursing-focused policy and planning. As a bit of background to my research program, I'm a registered nurse. I'm also a lawyer, and my PhD in nursing at the University of Toronto was focused on health professional regulation and governance. During my PhD, I worked as a clinical instructor. I did simulation courses, acute care, community care. I taught in a 4-year undergrad, a compressed time frame undergrad, a bridging program for internationally educated nurses, theory courses for grad students. So I felt like I had various teaching experience, but a very strong focus for me when I started my tenure track position in 2019 was figuring out an agenda for that 40% research aspect that Hussam mentioned. Workforce regulation and governance, if it doesn't sound like it, it's a very exciting field. It combines law, sociology, public policy, health and social care, and regulation bubbles up. It bubbles up in a lot of our discussions around workforce planning. I mean, how can we leverage evidence-based scope of practice reform, licensure changes, et cetera. So in 2020, I became the regulation and governance lead at the Canadian Health Workforce Network. Here is a screenshot of a webinar that Ivy and I put on in late 2020 about setting a research agenda for health workforce regulation and governance in Canada. You can still find it on the network's YouTube channel if you're interested. And I'm going to highlight some of the current research activities that we've been doing as we're building on that research agenda. So the first one is a study that I was the PI on, funded by the National Council of State Boards of Nursing Center for Regulatory Excellence. This one is just wrapping up. You can see a screenshot of our main findings paper there. That'll be available sometime in the next few weeks as an EPUB ahead of print. In this project, we did a comparative case study of American and Canadian nursing regulatory responses to the pandemic. So our findings discuss the pandemic as a catalyst for changes to scopes of practice, multi-jurisdictional licensure, education, entry to practice. And I presented this as part of a panel of country roundtables at the International Health Workforce Collaborative in May, also still available on YouTube. But in that way, we were bringing the nursing experience to the broader health workforce conversation. And my personal early career nurse researcher takeaway from this project, I got this intensive grant within a year of starting my tenure track position, and the funding conditions allowed me to include workload release in the budget. So my position is a typical, like Hussam was mentioning, 40-40-20. The 40% teaching is 4 courses a year. So I included a single course release for each of the 2 years of this project in the budget. So my faculty got that money to hire a sessional. And I think this is really important if you're building a research program and you get Tri-Council or other competitive international funding as a PI, you're running a big project on your own early in your tenure track, that there should be supports like potentially a release from an otherwise very heavy teaching load. It's also an incentive because otherwise it can be very difficult to find the time to not only write those Tri-Council grants, but also to not feel punished if you do actually happen to get it. I think the support can look different at different institutions, but it's important to consider how we can offer some of these workload flexibilities, especially in early career, at least from my experience. Next slide, Hussam, thank you. The second pillar of research at the network is that we've been growing is our mental health and substance use health workforce research. So we have a team that's been working together for a few years now. This first grant, was an operating grant where we looked at the impact of the pandemic on the capacity of this workforce to respond to population needs. And this included nurses who work in mental health and substance use health. Then we built on this catalyst do a catalyst grant. I'm leading that one. We're looking at the impact of regulation on equitable access to providers. And my early career takeaway from this, this program is that 1-year grants are hard. They're hard to do everything in 1 year. They're hard because partway through you need to divert your attention to submitting the next grant. Maybe that next one's also a 1-year grant. And they're especially hard for those of us who are early career and are still building the needed relationships with knowledge users and organizational collaborators. So in these grants, it has been very helpful. I would suggest necessary to have a team with very strong senior leaders and mentors and be ready to hit the ground running on these ones. The next pillar is on regulating practitioners who are providing virtual care. So these are 2 grants that I'm leading funded through SSHRC. We have a wonderful interdisciplinary team. We have 3 nurses on the team, myself as PI, Catherine Schiller from UNBC, and Siobhan Nelson from University of Toronto. We also have fabulous co-investigators in law, public health policy, sociology, and regulation. And my lesson learned on these ones is that some areas of workforce regulation and governance fall into like a Bermuda Triangle of Tri-Council because depending on how you look at it, is it SSHRC, is it CIHR? So really clarifying your fit to a specific call for that funder. The knowledge synthesis grants at SSHRC always have a theme, and in 2020 it was skills and work in the digital economy. So regulating professionals, not just nurses, but looking broader to other professionals, fit within that. So we included the nursing voice when we did a deeper dive policy case study on cross-jurisdictional licensure for nurses as one of 5 case studies that we did in that project. And then when we're building on this in the Insight Development Grant, we're comparing nurses to other professions like law, where regulating technology-enabled practice is to be blunt, further advanced. So we're comparing those to see what lessons we can learn. And finally, I want to briefly mention 2 other ongoing projects. The first is a major pillar of workforce research at the Canadian Health Workforce Network. It's a CIHR project grant, one of these 4-year longer-term grants. Ivy's leading this one on the Minimum Data Standard project, looking at enhancing the data collected about health workers across Canada to have more timely and more responsive workforce planning. And this includes aligning and expanding the nursing data across the country. And we've been able to partner with some wonderful nursing stakeholder groups, including the Canadian Indigenous Nurses Association, CFNU, and the CNA. A second one here is an international team where we've been commissioned by the WHO to conduct a global review of health workforce regulation to inform what will be the first guidance document on regulation from WHO. So we have a giant review paper, a smaller manuscript, and then a guidance document themselves that WHO is putting together, all still in draft form, close to final draft, hopefully published soon. Early career takeaway from these, being part of these bigger projects has really given me an appreciation of the balance that's needed in terms of having a nimble team or teams that can do some of that daily and weekly work and keep the project moving, while also having this larger network of stakeholders that can provide wonderful influence to the project and feedback at key junctures. So not to be afraid of those smaller working groups and dividing tasks to get that work done. So I've been watching and learning how that can be done efficiently. It's been a real eye-opener for me on these larger scale projects. So I hope I've inspired a little bit of interest in some nurse-led health workforce research. There is a real need to build capacity. It's a bit of a chicken and egg thing. You don't have a lot of those big grants in the field, so then you don't have a lot of students and trainees that are engaged in the research to build the capacity to start their own programs of research and then build the bigger teams and come all together to work on even bigger grants. So it is a small community right now, and like a lot of areas, everyone is stretched really thin. So we do have a lot of work to do in encouraging students with an interest in this and trying to get them embedded in different projects and letting them know about opportunities like the MyTax fellowships or the Health System Impact fellowships and get more nurse researchers through those types of programs as well. There are opportunities for the quantitative data geeks among us to work with some existing data sets that are limited in some ways, but there's also, there are opportunities to do that and to work with those already existing. And for the qualitative, data geeks among us, myself included, we could really capitalize on interdisciplinary training for students in this field, because workforce research can really apply legal, governance, regulatory, and policy lenses to the work to really enrich it. And on this, I'll also mention there's a new micro program in health workforce studies at the University of Ottawa. It's online, asynchronous, bilingual, and I really think that it's going to be a great opportunity for helping with capacity building, and Ivy can answer questions on that, I'm sure. And finally, a very quick mention of current and upcoming opportunities. There is a CIHR Health Policy Catalyst Grant funding opportunity live right now. CIHR has added a workforce-specific pool, very short timeline at this point, but it is wonderful that CIHR has moved quickly to get that funding call added, and I hope it's not the only one. So hopefully it's the first of many, so something to keep an eye on. And second, a plug here for a great networking and learning opportunity at the Canadian Health Workforce Virtual Conference held in early December, and would love to see a very strong nursing turnout to that. So thank you very much, everyone, for the opportunity to chat today. We do have 3 full slides of references that we can make available that Husam's prepared for us, so we can send those out, or however, if anyone wants access to those. But for now, on behalf of Husam and Ivy and myself, thank you so much for coming. And I think we have lots of time for Q&A before everyone has to head off to their next meeting. I'll turn it back to Linda maybe to facilitate that.
Oh, thanks very much, Kate. Thanks to Dr. Ben Ahmed, Dr. Leslie, and Dr. Bourgeot. We do have time for a Q&A. Maybe if we stop sharing the slides, then I can try and see everybody's. That's great, thank you. Either put your question in the chat or use the raise hand function, unmute, and ask any questions that may have occurred to you. I know there's been some interesting comments in the chat, Ivy, that you've been monitoring around investment and the return on investment value here. So it's really fascinating work, and very, very timely in terms of the type of presentation. So I'll be quiet and open it up, and please raise your hand and ask a question of our panel.
And just while folks are pulling together a question or a comment, I just want to add a little bit about, yes, all of the things that we recommend do have a cost. And I think we need to really echo the requests so that it's not just coming from one place. And also that we should frame it not as a cost, but as an investment. It's an investment in a really important sector, a sector that is having incredible challenges right now. And the downstream costs are much higher than putting these investments in place. So the more that we speak about it as an investment rather than a cost, and that there are many of us saying this, the better.
There's just a question in the chat about sharing the last poll again. So I've put it up. I hope everyone can see it there, just to see the options that we'd put up.
And I can see Sue Bookie Bassett. Do you want to go ahead, Sue?
Sure, thanks. Thanks for the discussion so far. It's really helpful, educational, and obviously a need for more work in this area. I just wondered, Ivy, if there is any evidence to date around predictions of the major retirements within the faculty workforce. So I know we've been predicting the nursing workforce trends for years now, as we have for faculty as well, but do we see a sense of like urgency within, I'm just thinking within the next 5 years, are we looking at major retirements in terms of existing faculty, and taking some of the strategies that are proposed look like they're more long-term. So how do we deal with this in on an ongoing basis as well, short-term and long-term, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, it's first of all important. So that's such an important question. Thank you so much for asking that. It's important to recognize that this is a complex, multi-layered problem, and therefore is going to need a multi-layered solution going forward. And so not to be facetious, I think we're going to need to, walk and chew gum at the same time. So we're going to need to do some things about succession planning. I would, if I were the lead of a school, I would put those in place immediately. I would start a committee in terms of succession planning and start developing some of those mentorship relationships. I would push really hard internally, for some data to make a case to those making decisions about faculty going forward. So if there can be dedicated funds from the provinces, to support that, I think that would be great. Do we have good information to be able to predict what the faculty retirements are, or let alone the nurse retirements are? No. The data are what they are right now, and we should utilize those to the best of our ability, right? We have a project that Kate, described, where we're trying to augment the data to make it stronger so that we can do planning that's not just focused on nursing and in one jurisdiction, but is focused on workforces, that cut across, different sectors, because nurses work with others. So let's get started on some of that planning. Let's develop, let's refresh the data, do some forecasting, talk about different scenarios, right? Workforce planning is not just a quantitative mathematical modeling exercise. It is informed by stakeholder perspectives, qualitative evidence. So it really is a multi-method type of approach. So that really needs to get started on that so that we have better data. But in the meantime, get started on succession planning, start lobbying really hard for dedicated faculty positions.
Thanks, Ivy. I see a hand up, but I'm just not quite sure by the name on the screen. Horick, it is, which I'm guessing is sort of an annotation.
Hi, sorry, it's my maiden name abbreviated. So
Right.
yeah, good luck with that. It's actually Wendy. So my question is about the work with CNA and looking at the opportunities to leverage registration as part of that data collection process. Because very much looking at, is there an opportunity to embed questions about intention to leave, the desire to have a certain FTE, all of those sorts of things that could plan some of those data elements, but also factoring in those pieces around workforce demography. So we know at certain ages, people have certain life commitments that you referenced in that flexibility piece. So workforce planning is sort of where I see me going in the future, and have found this really interesting. So I know you mentioned CNA, but looking at that more broadly from an all health professions that are regulated opportunity. I see you nodding, Ivy.
Yeah, I can start the discussion there, Wendy, and then pass it over to Ivy as well. Absolutely, I think you're right on that. There's a lot we can augment in terms of the annual registration data from the regulators for professions, not just not just in nursing, but in we're looking at workforce across across the country and in various different fields. So absolutely, and there's varying there's the information collected by regulators is very is different. And so just as a quick example from myself, I'm registered as a nurse in both Alberta and Ontario. I think I'm counted twice then. I don't know that they know that I'm the same person, and so I might be looking like two people. And I think Nurses Canada will probably alleviate some of that with a new national registry. But then the other regulator that I'm with, the Law Society, has a much more fulsome collection of data at the annual registration. It is optional questions, but they go into much more information about where I work, what I do, and a whole host of EDI questions that are asked that help inform an understanding of who is working and what is the workforce like in Ontario. So that is a lesson from outside of health. But absolutely, these are the types of things that we are looking at, and we've started to develop a sort of a model for a minimum data standard that includes a lot of questions. We've had postdocs, including Hussam and others who've looked across at some leading practices from other jurisdictions, what data is collected, how is it used for workforce planning, and then we've had stakeholder engagement sessions where many have come, including regulators and others involved, more at the clinical, daily level in terms of, hospital and community resources, and trying to understand what is needed by all of these different groups, and how do we best collect that, and what are the questions to ask, and how do we ask that appropriately. So that's the end goal in the couple years, is to get to that minimum data standard and to have it adopted. Maybe start with a few professions and then it'll expand out from there. But yeah, absolutely, it is working with registration data. In terms of the more quick, like we need to move people fast in an emergency basis and that sort of thing, then the annual data will not provide as up to date as needed, but by looking at other ways to collect that data as well. Ivy or Hussam, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll add, and then I'll also alert Hussam. There's a great question in the chat that I suspect that you would be very well positioned to answer. I think that we should leverage wherever data is being collected for that to be standardized insofar as possible, so that we can link it. That's the power of data, is to be able to link it across jurisdiction, across professions. And so that's the role of a minimum data standard, and really adopting that would be very helpful. It would advance the type of planning that we're doing, but we should not wait to plan. We can get started with the data that we have, and planning does not necessarily need to be this big federal government, national initiative. Planning can be very localized. Some work that we've been doing is in the city of Toronto. So schools can do their own workforce planning. Provinces, schools across the province, regions can do workforce planning. So we've actually found that the best types of plans, or the most informed plans, are the ones that are very close to the decision-making processes. So I would encourage everyone to do that. Hussam, I'll pass the very important question in the chat to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ivy. I have seen like a lot of questions, so I'm gonna just pick up randomly. Like one of them was like, how do you provide this supports and dedicated time flexibility when the organization is in a deficit supply state? Absolutely, this is an important question, because concretely, if we don't have enough nursing faculty, how can we do that? Now, like in research, some have suggested to hire other professors from other disciplines. This was like a solution, but some other researchers said that we cannot, or it's not a good idea, because we need to protect our discipline and the nursing. So this is like a dichotomy of opinions. For my and when we see the other problems that, for example, are facing internationally educated nurses, that they cannot be a nursing faculty because they don't have, they are not registered nurse. So there's like, when we are like in Canada and we need this much resources, we need that the regulatory bodies act and the other key stakeholders act to be to facilitate this process for the internationally educated nurses to take these positions if they will not teach in clinical settings. This can be a solution. The second solution is that we can give some courses to people who comes from other disciplines, for example, sociology, if we need to teach like sociological health sociology. Like we can invite Dr. Ivy Bourgault, for example. So like we need like to find some creative solutions to reduce this nursing shortages. And there's other ways that deans and nursing like CASNs, we should like talk and discuss about this these solutions. It's just like solution that comes from my mind and especially from the literature. If I go to another question, increase the accessibility for PhD programs. Absolutely, like in nursing education, when I have started my PhD in nursing at the University of Montreal, I thought that I'm gonna meet maybe minimum 60 or 100 students with me. But when I arrived at, the first course, I found only 7, I said, oh my God, like, but after I understood that there is not a lot of people who apply for PhD programs. So this, I know that there is like the personal life of people, they don't have time, etc. But why in nursing specifically, we don't have enough students, but in other domains and on other disciplines, we have like enough people. So this is the question maybe regarding the schools. Maybe they should give more grants of more funds for students, maybe like to have free tuition for the students who wants to be an academic position in the future. I hear just like seeing some.
Can I just check, Wendy, is that a legacy hand or is that a new hand?
It was actually a new hand.
Do you want to go ahead and then I'll ask Norma to
Sure.
answer the question.
So just building on the comment that Hussein just made, I completely agree. And I think if we actually truly did interprofessional education, we might be able to support some of that broader use of resources. But my question was actually on a discussion of the demand side as well. So I don't know that when we have looked historically at planning for seats in academic institutions, if we'd actually considered all of the places that nurses work. So that whole piece of looking at acute community, also looking at First Nations and Inuit Health Branch and that on-reserve population, as well as those private and public employers that don't necessarily fall into the typical nursing roles, because we know we have an in-demand skill set, and are we actually capturing what that real need is? That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Wendy.
I'll speak to that issue because we are partnering. So there's a broader interprofessional partnership, which includes the family practice nurses, because they're from their perspective, I don't know personally about this, but the case that has been made is that there are fewer practice opportunities presented to nursing students in primary care, and that would be really important to augment. And I think if nursing is often presented as many careers under one profession, and so we need to recognize that nurses can work in a variety of different sectors. And so how do we transition that, both including opportunities to work in primary care or nursing outposts, for nursing students, but also for those, who want a mid-career change or early career change or late career change. How do we incorporate that? So really important questions. And all of that would come into different scenarios for planning so that we would recognize, not problematize those different paths that are taken.
Thanks. Thank you. Norma, did you have a question?
Yeah, actually, so I just wanted to kind of touch base really quickly on the doctoral concepts. I can speak from my own personal experience, but I have a feeling I'm not alone. I have 32 years of experience, ranging from a nurse practitioner in family medicine since 1999, nurse entrepreneur, nurse administrator. I currently teach for UBC Okanagan's and have done. So I have got this whole spectrum of experience. And then I finally decided after 25 years to go back and get my doctorate. I was told I was too old. I was told I had too much experience. I was told I had to get a third master's degree in research. I was told I would probably have to consider going elsewhere to get my doctorate. I have 5 children and a husband who is well integrated into the community and his work. He can't move. So I think, and the list goes on, actually, I have to have a $20,000 grant to get into the program. I have to maintain that grant every year. So it was barrier. And I ended up going to the United States and getting my DNP. And that's what I'm just finishing up now as I go into my final defense. So what I speak from is, I think when you're looking at the PhD, we need to look at the reality that most nurses, not all, but most, are coming from, I go to work, I get experience, and then I go back to school and get my master's. Then I go into administration, or I go into education, or I go into something, and then I go back and get my PhD. Only then you get this wall of no can do. So maybe those are some things that we need to consider and address in, wouldn't it be amazing if all nurses could have advanced education, including their doctorate. Like doctors, they have clinical doctorates, and they can get their PhD and specialize in research. I think that there needs to be some definitely, I hope that that story shares some ideas that maybe are some things that we can also look at as to, I can't imagine I'm the only person who's met several of those barriers and walked away and said, can't make it happen.
Yeah, that's an unfortunately common story. I think there needs to be, again, a collective and systemic approach to making pathways supported and not barriers. So it's, thank you for raising the point. I think that that's something, that should go into some cogent recommendations for sure. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciated what you said about mid-career changes. I still at 52 don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So yeah, lots of changes.
Absolutely. And I think there's this general disregard for experience. Like if you don't have a credential associated with it, there's just, I don't get that. And I think, I've seen a bit of a shift where, for example, people understand and appreciate the importance of experience when the experienced nurse has left and they are replaced with an inexperienced nurse because the experienced nurse is done and burnt out. And they realize what impact that has. The experience enables all the different team members to do things in a much more highly productive way. And so I think that there is a bit of a shift to recognizing the importance of experience, but we have to push really, really hard.
Yeah, well, we also have a lot of nurse administrators who, as far as they get is a master's degree, and yet they're sitting at the table with PharmDs, MDs, and they don't get the recognition or the credit because they don't have the letters after the name. I'm sorry, I hate to say it. It's the world we live in.
We are a credentialist society, but that's also, it also intersects with gender, right? So, but that's a whole other talk.
Yes.
I think I'll draw it to a close. We're 1 minute after one. I want to be respectful of everybody's time and thank everybody for their contributions to this discussion, and thank our speakers again. Dr. Hussam has put his email address in the chat if people want to contact him for the reference list. Note that the recording of this session will be made available on CASN's YouTube channel, and it will be also circulated to you as attendees in the coming days. And please feel free to share the link within your networks. Thank you everybody for joining us today, and CASN certainly hopes you will consider joining us for the next Lunch and Learn on October 12, when Dr. Melanie Lavoie-Tremblay will be presenting on COVID-19. What did we learn about methodologies, successes and challenges encountered in our nursing workforce research? So thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.